being an ally is not about being a perfect support system for someone with a disability. It's about you wanting to take action to support someone with a disability, right? And there is a major lack of that in the world, even in 2025, because people are.
Louis Canto e Castro, welcome to the show.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to have you here. So, you have been a advocate for disabled people throughout your entire career, and as someone who's grown up with your own disabilities, what have you noticed with campaigning for other people's disabilities as someone who's in potentially their similar situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is a twofold answer. So, I'm originally from South Africa, and that is a very different world in contrast to the UK. In South Africa, disability isn't really an agenda item at the table yet, and there's a major lack of accessible infrastructure within the country. So that means that people like myself who are power wheelchair users or wheelchair users are relying heavily on private companies to transport them around, which is in most cases unaffordable. And also, you don't get a lot of opportunities on the big stages unless you know someone or you're extremely popular on social media. So I knew from a young age that I wanted to be an advocate for the disabled community. I knew that I wanted to help push the boundaries and let the world understand that we are human beings just like anyone else and we can contribute like anyone else. And it was really a hard slog. It was really hard to find opportunities to do that. A lot of the time, it was creating some YouTube videos and hoping that that would be seen by other people. Other times, it was speaking on stage, but it was very sporadic because most of my career in South Africa was spent being unemployed. But in a huge contrast, coming to the UK 5 years ago, it's changed that whole world completely for me because there is so much available to me here in terms of infrastructure. Disability is an agenda item, so I'm getting a lot of opportunities to do that. It's a lot easier to be out there and on the front lines and advocating. So I'm privileged to be able to do that.
Before I move on to my next question, because you got your, we were talking about this, and again, I forgot. Can you explain what your own disabilities are? Because
Sure.
you were born with it, but it wasn't discovered until you were 8 months old.
Correct. So I have a condition called spinal muscular atrophy. There's also various types. So there's four different types of that, and I have type 2. And it's essentially it's a degenerative muscle wasting condition. So really around 8 months old, my mum and my dad kind of started realizing that there's something wrong here, and I'm not really developing like the average child should be. And back in 1985, most people didn't really know what SMA was, so we had to see a lot of doctors, and we got an official diagnosis just before my third birthday. And over the years, it's kind of progressed. So I've gone from being able to dress myself, or not dress myself, but at least put a shirt on or take it off myself, wash my own face, shave myself, to now requiring full-time care. And um, what I can do now is basically drive my power chair, use my mobile phone if it's on a table, and a mouse if I really have to, because the muscles have wasted away so much. So I've gone from being able to work quite effectively to trying to now have to find different ways to adapt and use assistive technology and AI and those amazing things that are available to us in these times to try and make sure that I stay on track with my career and still be impactful.
Would you say that with your muscular, with your, I know what is with me today? I'm forgetting your condition. This is, I apologize. This
Just
is
use the acronym; it's easier. SMA.
with you having SMA. Would you say you've got a bit of a kingship to other people with disabilities because you yourself have a disability, or do you not like to see that?
This is a really interesting question. So I took the Harvard implicit bias test, and the results told me that I'm partially biased towards disabled people, which was quite interesting because I've always wanted to advocate for my community, and I've always wanted to show the world that disability is not something that disables us. It's actually society that disables us. But but I think I probably wouldn't go as far as saying a kinship, but I think there is an automatic level of empathy. You know, I can I can relate to many struggles that my peers have to go through, even though we have such a diverse range of disabilities across the globe, and we also know that that can be intersectional as well. It's having that automatic level of empathy to be like, okay, this is what they have, this is how they function, and that's okay.
It's actually quite interesting you were saying that you're a little bit more biased because you wouldn't think that with someone in an advocacy role, but then I suppose you do get those people who, I'm not saying that's your case, but you do get those people who champion one thing, but behind the scenes is the other. I know it's quite common. There's the thing, the example I always heard is with politics. It's like that one senator who's against gay rights, but then he goes home on his computer, then you find out what he does. It's kind of, I know it's a weird example, but it's the only one I've got. So
I mean, it's a valid point. I think that there will always be people who pretend to represent something and do something different when no one's looking. I think that's in our nature as humans. I think for me, I think I often struggle with seeing someone's potential and then they don't see what they're capable of or they don't see what their potential is. And I think that's where my bias starts to come into play because I'm like, you have this available at your fingertips. You can do something with this, and yet they choose not to. No, I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here to say that what they do is right or wrong. It's just when I think about my life and the things I've had to go through and the things I've had to learn and the skills I've had to develop, it was because I saw that potential and I took those opportunities to develop that potential. And I think it's helped build a much more resilient version of who I am today.
would you say that's also assisted with your advocacy as well? So I know you've worked with a couple of organizations, but you've also put on Instagram in particular and LinkedIn about how it's kind of difficult for you as someone who has very dependent on PAs and well personal assistants for those who don't know, and the world's essentially accommodating you, because I've seen your posts about Superdry and not being able to get through the store in your wheelchair, and I've seen your other posts about traveling, and it never occurred to me, because for those who don't know, I've got autism, but in the difference between me and you, Louis, is if we were to put, they did an experiment and they tried to find us in a crowd, you're easy because you're in a wheelchair. With me, it's like, where's Cayde? Because I just look like everyone else. But the point is that because I've never had to go in a wheelchair before, I've never understood like the logistical challenge. Because for me, if I was to get on a train, it's quite simple. Head down to the train station, hop on, pick a seat, off I go, and do all that fun stuff. But with you, you've got to plan ahead, tell conductors and the train drivers, oh, I'm in the wheelchair, and they've got to accommodate you. And how, yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going with this question, but how's your own personal experience with stuff like that affected your advocacy?
I mean, it's it definitely makes the work do more challenging, right? Because there is a certain element of unpredictability to living life in a chair, right? As you said, it's easy to identify my disability, but most people, you're not alone. Most people don't know what that's like. So the whole point of the travel posts are to highlight how good and bad it can be when traveling in a wheelchair, especially in London, where a majority of the underground network is not accessible, right? So one of the recent videos that I did was a friend of mine who I met at Waterloo Station, and we tried to do the same trip that she would take from Waterloo to Tottenham Court Road to her work, and that normally takes her 15 minutes in total. But because the Northern Line is not accessible, we had to circumnavigate that route in a different way and we ended up taking an hour and 8 minutes to do the same trip.
What, because you were in a chair?
Yeah, because we needed step-free access.
Oh, for crying out loud.
That's the reality. So when someone books me to deliver a talk or to come and deliver some services at their office, I usually start planning that journey 3-4 days in advance, and letting the different train providers know that this is the level of service I need. There are certain apps available that I can use to do that, but they are very segregated. So I have multiple apps to do one job, which is book assistance for travel and book train tickets, and you end up using 3 or 4 different apps in order to first of all plan your route, then book your tickets, and then also request your passenger assistance. What that doesn't have is it doesn't have real-time up-to-date information. So quite often you'll end up at a destination and they'll be like, sorry, the elevator's out of order. So then I've got to get back on the train, work my way around, and quite often that means getting into a cab and then going to where I need to go, instead of just being able to get out of the station like everyone else.
And that's if the cab driver accepts to take you on as a driver or passenger.
Yes, so that's a very valid point to make, because I have had cab drivers stop, see that I'm the passenger, and then drive away again. And they're not allowed to do that, but it does still happen.
Well, the problem is with that is who's going to stop them? Realistically, it's an argument of the law's only as good as it is enforced. I remember when I had to take taxis from where I lived in Exford to get to Taunton for my college, basically because it was too far and I couldn't drive. One of the drivers said to me, most of the drivers that work in this company wouldn't take people with wheelchairs because they couldn't be asked to fold down the seats and chuck it in the back. So that's why I brought it up. It's just one of those things where you think, my words, because unless you've actually been in a wheelchair at all you have, but this is more to the audience, unless you've been in a wheelchair your entire life, or even for a set period because you had to, you don't know what it's like. I mean, the closest I know is when my mum had to be in a wheelchair and we were going around the town centre, Taunton again. Can't really remember. I was quite young, but the point is that's the closest I've got to experiencing someone in my personal life who's had to use a wheelchair, but I've never had to use one. So
yeah, it's hard. I think we have to be realistic, right? As a disabled population, we need to understand that people don't know what they don't know, and we can't blame them for that, right? But it's this is why I talk about allyship a lot, and helping people understand that being an ally is not about being a perfect support system for someone with a disability. It's about you wanting to take action to support someone with a disability, right? And there is a major lack of that in the world, even in 2025, because people are either intimidated by the topic of disability or because they haven't taken the time to educate themselves. And in some cases it's ignorance. People don't want to do that. They think that disability is not going to touch their lives. And the reality of disability is that I think the recent statistic that I've come across is that 70% of the disabled population are conditions or disabilities that have been developed later in life. They haven't been from birth. So this is for me. This should be a red flag for society to know that we should be actually fixing these accessibility dilemmas, because everything can happen today, tomorrow, and they could end up in a chair as well. They could be diagnosed with a disability and would be relying on the very system that people like myself and others who struggle to navigate the transport system, but they're going to have to understand and learn how to adapt that as well, because it's not fit for purpose.
I have thought about that myself, because with my autism, it doesn't just affect me, it affects everyone around me. In my personal work and professional day job, the amount in a way, it has negatively affected some of my relationships with some of my co-workers and some of the other people I work. But what can be done with it? And I was speaking to two of my co-workers last night, and they said we were talking about this, that some disabilities aren't recognized till later in life. So autism's a good one. I wasn't diagnosed when I was
Yeah, that's
10.
true.
Yeah. Color blindness, like how are you going to know a baby's colorblind? Dyslexia,
Yeah,
ADHD. Yeah, but that's my point. I mean, I think in your case it was because it was physical, but it's all the mental side of things as well. I also think,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
go on.
I was going to say, I think this is also one of the key elements of my advocacy work is making sure that I'm not just thinking about those who are physically disabled. It's that we have to recognize the neurodivergent community. We have to recognize those who have mental health issues, and I do a lot of self education, and I'm trying to expose myself to other demographics as much as possible because in most cases, clients don't have the budget for me to bring in other people who specialize in certain areas of disability. So many occasions, I am the person that they rely on to help guide the way. So I have to make sure that I'm representing everyone within the disabled community as best as I can. I would never ever want to speak on other people's behalf, but I would certainly want to be able to be in a position to say, yeah, that's not going to work for someone who is neurodivergent. Why don't you have a policy in place that allows them to book a meeting room and use that as an office because they require a quiet space to work in, or they don't function really well in a hot desking situation because they need consistency, right? These are the realities of some of the people within the divergent community. So it's important that I educate myself on that, and it's important that I stay up to date with best practice because ultimately my role is to advise organizations on what best practice looks like and what they can do to go beyond the minimum compliance.
I also think, play devil's advocate, it's also a case by case basis. So for me personally, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. I can personally function well in a normal work office. I've done that through my entire career. Like when it comes to adjustments for me, it's just more like maybe you've got to explain something to me a different way, or maybe we got to sideline the. I've had it a few times where we've had to sideline the conversation so you can explain a word to me, then we can get back on track. But someone else might be a bit more complicated than that. So I can see why people are a bit hesitant to, but at the same time, I do think that I agree with you. I do think there needs to be better practice in place.
Yeah, I think for me the key is helping them build a process that has the right checkpoints in place to ask the right questions so that they are able to support people on a case by case basis, right? I mean, a great example of this is where I used to work before. My boss has SMA as well. In fact, the same type of SMA that I had. And yet the condition has affected our bodies in very different ways. And we required support in very different ways. So this is why it's important to have a set process in place to make sure that we have the right questions to ask at the right times, so that by the end of the process, that individual has a very personalized human approach to their adjustments that they require in the workplace.
Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult because you've got to make the rules fair for everyone, but at the same time, you've got to give. Yeah, it's really complicated. I know in an ideal world, it'd all be sorted out and we'd have none of these issues. But I think I worry as time goes on, as we discover more and more things, more conditions of disabilities going to come up as a result of, like, let's say we started colonizing Mars in the future, and then we started getting a few people who become disabled because of the elements that are exclusive on Mars. Then we're going to be in this entire ballpark again. And you see where I'm going with this? I can see it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know I'm making up a kind of something in the future kind of scenario, but here's the thing: what if it happened?
yeah. I mean, I think that's a very interesting train of thought because ideally, in a utopian world, you would hope that we would learn from our previous mistakes. We just have to look at history to realize that that's not always the case. We don't always learn from our mistakes, but I think this is why I have the passion to do what I do. I'm happy to be on the front lines fighting for our community. I'm happy to be working with organizations with regards to their inclusion practices and their accessibility practices to make sure that at least for that organization, they will have the right knowledge and the right skills to be able to continue doing that going forward. There obviously is no guarantee that that's something that they will do, but at least I have made an effort to do so and set an example of what best practice looks like. And just FYI, if anyone's listening to this and they are in the process of making plans to colonize Mars, I'd be happy to volunteer and come help make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again.
Just to kind of move the conversation along, I want to talk a bit about some of your advocacy work and your time on Dragon's Den, where you pitched Assist Me, which was, for those who don't know, it was basically like a website plugin to help people with all variety of disabilities navigate websites. I did see the clip that you linked on your Instagram. In your words, how do you think it went?
Yeah, so I think context is really important here. So I was on Dragon's Den representing one of my employers. It wasn't my business. And we unfortunately didn't get investment. But I think that there was a disagreement between the Dragons and the business owners around how this product should be marketed. So the way that we were marketing that product was to businesses who want to make a difference in the user experience of someone with a disability. And in in history, most of the time, those kind of tools and pieces of software were put onto the disabled community to purchase because they were the ones with the disability. And if we think about geographically, in a first world country, that's kind of okay. It's not the end of the world. In first world countries, there are many disabled people who can afford to pay for software like that. But when we start breaking that out into second and third world and fourth world countries, we're now thinking about people who are barely staying above the poverty line having to now invest in software just so that they can navigate the internet more effectively. That's not an equitable user experience, right? So the idea was to sell that product to businesses to put on their websites, not as a solution to inaccessible design, but as a backstop until they were in a position to invest in making their websites more accessible. And the Dragons didn't believe that that was the right way to market the product. They believed that we should be contacting retailers and integrating it into retail offerings, and also marketing it to individuals. Now, I'm not a business expert, and it wasn't my business. I was there to represent the disabled community and explain how this technology works. And I still believe that these kind of tools are extremely helpful, especially some of the newer ones that are out there. They've gone quite far in terms of the support that they offer, but they are not a solution to inaccessible websites. They are definitely not a solution. They are a byproduct of the accessibility industry that, in my opinion, creates a backstop or a buffer for businesses as they go on their inclusive design journeys for websites, because it's not easy to build websites in an accessible way. There are many guidelines that you have to adhere to. So it takes time, it takes investment, and not all businesses are in position to do that straight off the bat, right? So these kind of tools are a great supplements, but they are definitely not the solution.
What was the outcome of Assist Me after Dragon's Den? Did it
Uh,
take off?
so
Go on.
So I know that they have progressed in their business, and they are doing work with other organizations. I no longer work there. Once I think a couple of months after the episode went live on television, I ended up moving somewhere else to go work in a workplace consultancy. So I don't really know the major ins and outs, but I know that they are still operating. I know that they are still doing work, but the episode definitely gave us a lot of exposure as individuals, as a business. It definitely increased traffic to their website and probably put them in a better position to reach more people than what we were organically doing at the time. So as a profile booster, it was phenomenal. I mean, even for me as an individual, it it really helped grow my profile on LinkedIn. And it still feels weird, but I have people coming up to me in the street saying, "Weren't you the guy from Dragon's Den?" And it's like, yeah, that was me. And then we have a conversation about it and what it was like. And so, yeah, it's cool. It was really, really good for my profile.
Well, at least I guess you got thought of your intended result, but just not the way you planned. So,
Yeah,
yeah, can I say my opinion on it if you're all right with it?
please.
I think I get the point of view with the retail side thing, because if you're in a hurry, I personally wouldn't want it. Because for me, using technology is a dot. I mean, I've built my own computer, like physical desktop. So for me, when it comes to most people, I am not leaps and bounds, but I am definitely ahead to a point where I know my ins and outs. So something like that would work for me. I get the dragon's point of view with maybe I don't know. I mean, it's kind of an awkward one because I understand you don't want to put it on the people who've got the disability. Because, like me and you, we didn't choose to have it. Not at all. So I don't think it's fair in that regard to say you have to have this, although you didn't choose to have the disability. But I think personally, it would have been better if you said this is an application to put on your computer, not websites, because my instant thought was that's good for surfing the web, but what about applications like how we're using Zoom now? Is like you download it onto your
Sure.
computer, or maybe I use DaVinci Resolve to edit this podcast. But what about for that? Because it's not a website; it's an application which you can or you choose or choose not to pay for. And maybe it could have been incorporated it onto someone's computer for external applications other than the website. I get at that point you are putting it on the person with the disability to get it, because I can't imagine Microsoft or Apple going, yeah, we'll pay the fee. I
Sure.
get that.
Sure.
But I'm just thinking if we're talking a bit more accessibility, just take it, maybe focus it away from the web to, and maybe put it more on their local devices. Or you could even
Yeah.
done it as an app, because more people got phones on computers these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I think that wasn't the business model that the founders had chosen, and I was on the journey with them and supporting their vision and mission. So it's a very valid point. I think, as I said, there's been major advancements in assistive tools like this since I was on Dragon's Den, and I mean that was almost 4 years ago now. So it's been a while, right? And the world has come up with some really interesting things. One of them that I'm currently really enjoying is called Cephable. I can send you some details after this, but it's an application that I put on my computer, and it allows me to actually program it to do the things that I wanted to do. And it even uses facial recognition. So, for example, when I wink my left eye, I can make that perform an action. So now we're not just talking about in the professional world. We're not talking about opening this up into the gaming world, right? That could be like Jump, or it could be something else within the game. So I'm really intrigued to see what this software can do. It's been really eye opening, and I can see the potential that it has for someone like me. So I'm really looking forward to testing it further. But I think their model is exactly that. This is the user who installs it on their laptop or on their app stores or on their desktops, and it then works across all apps and all browsers, right? So this is talking about something on a whole other level here. So that is the kind of advancements that I'm referring to. I think we have to be careful about holding these tools at a really high regard, because I can see organizations using that as a get out of jail free card for them to do what they should be doing, which is designing their websites accessibly.
We're kind of seeing it now with AI, aren't we? And AI, I've spent the other day screwing around with Sora, a bit. And for those who don't know, Sora just basically allows you to make like art and images and videos with some prompts. And I agree. I had a guest on, don't know whether you know him, Louis, by the name of Roscoe Britton. He was one of the early guests. Now, he's basically an artist, and he said to me, "Well, you're not an artist, you're a writer. You just make some good prompts." And I agree with him. But the point is that we've seen it where companies have been using AI, relying heavily on AI images to put in their articles or AI articles. The reason I bring this up is because I can see that exact same thing happening with what you're describing with these applications and Chrome extensions for the disabled people with the same mentality, different tools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think AI. Look, I love AI. I'm a major adopter of AI. I think that there is a strong caveat here that I have to mention is the fact that AI is not a replacement of a human, and we have to recognize that AI has its own biases, right? You ask her to create an image of a wheelchair user, and the automatic thing is putting them in a medical, like hospital type wheelchair. Um, and right, so you have to prompt it really well to say, okay, well, actually, this is a user in a power wheelchair. It has 6 wheels. It's a mid-wheel drive. It has a certain controller, and then yes, it generates the right image. But we have to recognize that there are biases within that, and we as humans have to check that information, and we have to prompt it in the appropriate ways. But what I've noticed in the digital accessibility realm is that there are organizations who are using AI to identify the accessibility errors on their websites in a very quick way, and then helping them come up with solutions on how to fix that so that it is more accessible and meets standards. But the reality of standards is that it doesn't always translate to the user experience of someone using assistive tech. So whenever I'm doing an digital accessibility project, I am making sure that we are using those AI tools or one of my partner organizations to audit websites, show you the errors in the report, explain what needs fixing, and then using real people like myself with assistive technology to test the website so that they understand this is what the problem is, this is the workaround we had to use, or we couldn't use a workaround, so we need to design it differently. Then we know that we're going beyond minimum compliance and that we are truly making it accessible to everyone.
I think also you're saying about it's quite interesting how AI is being used to help the disabled, but I worry because have you ever seen? Oh, I've seen a clip of this. It's not related to disabled people, but it's related to criminals. Where I think it was someone correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was the London police. They were using AI in the CCTV cameras to identify who was more likely gonna be a criminal or to spot criminals.
Okay.
You see where this is going. It's like what's stopping that being used for disabled people? It's like, oh, so like I said earlier, where spot Cayde and spot Louis in a crowd, well, they can use AI to go Cayde's autistic, or someone else is like they got ADHD, dyslexia, or they've got a type of blindness you wouldn't notice. It's I could worry. I worry that might happen in the future.
That's an interesting point. So I attended a workplace event earlier this year that was focused on AI, and I was one of the speakers talking about how I've integrated AI into my life. And we had a presentation from a security company who is using AI in their footage to help identify risks and abnormalities within footage. And they are doing it in such a really cool way. They basically generate hashing from the image, so you actually don't see the visual like you and I are seeing it. The computer just sees hashing, and it can because it's recording 24 hours, it can detect abnormalities in the hashing. So the certain shapes of the hashing will tell it, okay, this is a car. It's normally parked on the street, so that's okay. Oh, hold on. This is a truck. Why is a truck in the street? It's in the last 6 months, there's never been a truck in the street. And then it will flag something to security that maybe you should be keeping an eye on this because it's abnormal, right? If people are fighting, this is abnormal human behavior, so it will then flag it against security. And this is doing it all whilst protecting our privacy, because the visual that the computer is interpreting is not like when you and I are seeing each other right now. So for me, that's very interesting. But where I think it might become a problem is very, very, hopefully very far down the future, that when we have AI responding to AI incidences, AI flagging incidences, I think that's where we might to ensure that there's a human element involved in that process, so that AI is not making decisions for us. I think that's probably something that would worry me, but I don't think I would live long enough to see that happen. I think whilst AI is developing really fast, I don't see it progressing that far down the line that we will have like robots or AI responding to AI prompts. I don't see that happening. I just don't.
I disagree with you on that because there was a Netflix documentary where it talks about human biases in computer code. So this was talking about in America where I'm trying to make sure I get the premise right. The premise was that the way it was unintentional, but the way these compute like websites and all that got coded was to be a bit harsher towards black people. And that's really, and I thought about it. I was like, well, hang on, AI is being developed by humans, which means the human biases is going to get involved in the AI thing. So I worry that's going to happen. I was thinking, I wasn't sure whether to bring this up, but whenever I go apply for jobs, I sometimes put that I've got a disability, and I wonder how many jobs I've personally been turned down because I've said that.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that. I
But
don't
here's the
doubt that
thing,
for a
how do you
second.
prove it? Because let's say I'm a landlord and I'm never going to do this, but let's say I don't want a gay couple or a lesbian couple move in. How do I tell them no? Yeah, so and so. We've reviewed your application and we've decided you don't meet the criteria. Thank you for applying, and you haven't met the criteria, so we're not going to give you the property. Best of luck. You could. It's just so easy to get away with stuff, and I worry the AI is going to be coded in that way where it's unintentionally discriminatory. Although the person who made it didn't intend it, subconsciously they thought, I have a prejudice against, just for the sake of argument, Muslim women, sake of argument, and then it targets them. So you never know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there are definitely risks to AI. What I think the point that I'm making is I don't see a world in the very near future where AI is supporting AI. I still believe that we're going to have humans at the end of the process to check that what the AI has done is correct.
On a more positive side of things, you've been nominated for some awards for your advocacy work. I know HSBC UK nominated you for an award. What's it like to be nominated and win awards for your advocacy?
That's a really good question around being nominated for an award. I think first and foremost, I've never ever done advocacy work to try and get that level of recognition. So for me, being nominated has been phenomenal. So HSBC was one of the sponsors of the National Diversity Awards, which I was originally or first nominated for. It's actually one of my first nominations I've ever had for my advocacy work. And then I was also shortlisted as a finalist for a under one diversity and inclusion award as well. So two nominations in one year is really. I guess I'm still in shock if I'm honest. When I think about how many amazing people are out there advocating for others and doing some really phenomenal work, even at a global scale, and to still be nominated. I mean, it's amazing. I'm so grateful that my work and efforts are being recognized at that level. Even though I didn't win any awards from either of those two nominations, I feel privileged to be on the list with so many other change makers, and to be recognized by such prestigious awards is really a privilege, and I'm really grateful for that.
I suppose it's kind of like the cherry on top of the cake No, I mean, it's like, here's something nice to go with it.
Yes,
Yeah. What can we
yes.
expect? Go on.
I was going to say, I was really humbled during the National Diversity Awards process because by the end of the voting process, I had 111 votes, and sometimes when you're working and you're frustrated because you feel like you're not doing enough and you're not making a big enough impact, and then you see something like that, and you're like, okay, actually, you are doing enough. You're making an impact for that many people to want to vote for you, and just reading some of the things that people had to say about me was just, yeah, it was so empowering, and it's just motivated me even more to do more and be more.
What can we expect to see next in your advocacy work going forward?
So I'm very glad you asked that question. At the moment, I am in the final stages of rolling out my own framework. I'm obviously an independent consultant now and have been since October last year. And I've realized that I need to give my clients a framework. I need to give them something that they can take away and use to support their journeys if I'm not around. But this is the reality of consultancy. You can't be around forever. There has to come to a point where your client has been given as much support as they need, and they then need to pick up that flag and carry it on their own. And what I wanted to do was come up with a framework that can do that in some way, so that whether I do one piece of work or 20 pieces of work for them, that when we eventually say you're ready to be on your own, that they have a tool that can work for them. So I'm in the final stages of developing that, and I'm hoping to roll that out hopefully before the end of this year. It just depends on how busy I get and how often I'm taken away from the office to go do projects. But we'll see. That's probably my biggest piece of news. But I'm also going to be going abroad, speaking on stage in Amsterdam in a workplace event, which is a really big event in the corporate real estate, and really looking forward to that. It's going to be bringing the lived experience elements to data in the workplace and around happiness and work, and whether that really translates to the disabled uh, colleague or not.
Louis Canto E. Castro, everyone. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your advocacy work and support you as well?
Yeah, thank you so much. I would say LinkedIn is probably my most active platform, and if you search my name, my name is usually one of the first ones that come up, so it's easy to find. But also, I'm on Instagram, very contentious handle in some circles, but thanks to my friends and myself, I'm always referred to as the unstoppable crazy cripple. So on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, if you search Unstoppable Crazy Cripple, you'll find me there.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you want more inspiring stories such as Louis Canto E. Castro's, then you'll enjoy Jason DeLine's story on how he became the voice for Drago in Bakugan over here.